Hello people of the internet, it's Amanda, and for today's video, we're here to talk about Kurosagi episode 4. Now, I've been doing recap videos for the past couple of episodes, so if you haven't seen them yet, I'll be putting the playlist down in the description below. But basically, episode 4 is kind of like pivotal when it comes to the narrative. There's already this big confrontation between Kurosaki and Mikimoto, the person who he's trying to pursue, the reason why he became a Kurosagi in the first place. And it's just so interesting how the pacing of everything is, how they're developing the relationships in terms of the characters surrounding Kurosaki. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. As usual with Kurosagi, since the topic is always about tapping on real life scams that is not just happening in Japan but also in different parts of the world, this time around they covered corporate related scams, like for example headhunters who ask for a security deposit for those who are seeking newer jobs so that they are able to like secure the position or help them out in terms of seeking out better employment. But at the same time, basically it's just them trying to get money from the person that they're supposedly headhunting. And then another thing is this whole for example corporations that are in the brink of hitting bankrupt because of corona, and they're like someone's gonna propose or gonna consult and propose loans and mergers and stuff like that, but technically it's a takeover scam of someone just wanting to absorb the company. So it's a little bit more technical as compared to the scams in the earlier episodes. I do feel like the more that we progress, there might be a lot more complicated cases that they introduce into the narrative, which is how like the past couple of episodes have been so far. Like episode 1, episode 2, it's still a lot more, I'm not really saying lightweight, but it's definitely something that's a lot more familiar to a lot of people. But then afterwards, like episode 3, episode 4, it gets a little bit more complicated in terms of like large scale businesses and scams that are happening. But it is happening in real life no matter how large scale it is. So again, as I mentioned, this one focuses more on corporate related scams, and it's a scam that Kurosaki tried to turn things around to reach Mikimoto. Now, in episode 3, so Shiraishi has provided information as to where Mikimoto can be reached, and at the same time, there's also this thing where Kurosaki discovered this whole like money laundering scheme that's been happening behind the scenes of everything, and it's all connected to what's happening in episode 4, where he's trying to tail Mikimoto and find out all these things surrounding him and stuff like that, so that he's able to finally confront him. Now, of all the things that happened, so eventually he gets to him. Now, I wouldn't get into the technicalities of what he did or how it happened and stuff like that, but basically, as I mentioned earlier, he worked his way around the corporate scams that I mentioned earlier, and then eventually he reached Mikimoto with the help of the company that Mikimoto was trying to swindle at the time. And then they had this entire confrontation that at first he was keeping his cool, but then he finally asked the question as to why Mikimoto swindled his father, and thus leading his family to its eventual fate, and that it turned him into the Kurosagi that he is. Now, what's interesting about this one is, obviously, I think if you've been minding how these scams are, scammers, they don't really pick anyone. They just go for someone who would go for it, and that's how they play this entire thing. And that's basically what Mikimoto said as well. Kurosaki said that his father was an ordinary man, that they weren't even rich, so why? Like, out of all people, why? And it's the question that he's been trying to process ever since, because he was just 15 years old at the time, and it was a question that led him to this very moment. But then Mikimoto answers him and tells him that there's really no particular reason why his father was chosen. It wasn't anything special, and the fact that the more ordinary that a father or a parent is, the more special they want their child to be. Thus, the reason why they wanted more money and that they get into these things. And Mikimoto even mockingly replied to Kurosaki that his father should have been proud because Kurosaki became special and became this Kurosagi that is known in the world of Shirosagis. And it was so, that scene was so good. I mean, it was so, like, it was just straightforward as it is, but definitely the villainous air of Mikimoto was just right there. There was no, it wasn't apologetic or anything. He was smiling, even scoffing at the fact that Kurosaki was there demanding for answers, and he just gave it to him. And he even said that, if I understood correctly, Mikimoto even said that, I don't even remember their faces, and it was so horrific to watch that unfold, because obviously for Kurosaki, it was how his entire life, like what he committed his life to. And he was introduced to Mikimoto back when he was younger, when he went to their house. And so the fact that he said that it just means that, you know, your family is just one of the victims, and it's not as significant to Mikimoto as it is for Kurosaki. And that entire thing was just so nicely put. Kurosaki, the way that he was just stunned at that moment, like the buildup of emotions in that particular scene, and then it was like there was this delay of how he processed what was said to him, and that he ran after Mikimoto, but then the doors opened and the police were there to arrest Mikimoto. It was so, I don't know, like everything about that scene, the unrelentlessness, the unrelentlessness of Mikimoto in that scene, the police, the glares that Kashina was giving Kurosaki, the way that Kurosaki reacted to that particular moment, everything about it was so, like, again, it played off in a way that Kurosaki was frozen as to how he's going to react, because everything that led up to that moment was ending anticlimactically right in front of his face. And it was so, like, I love that entire sequence of, you know, the police trying to stop Kurosaki, because Kurosaki was suddenly became very aggressive when everything occurred to him that whatever it is that he's been doing all these years, you know, is like went into that moment, and then it ended up with just the police getting to Mikimoto. Eventually, we learned after that the charges for Mikimoto was dropped, and so he was able to walk free. Kashina was really angry about the turn of events, and at the same time, like 2 weeks later, it was revealed that Kurosaki actually knows that he's also being a pawn. He's also being used as a pawn by Katsuragi in this entire thing. Like, I doubt that even with the they call this, even with the way that Kurosaki explained the situation, you know, saying that he knew that Katsuragi was using him as a pawn, considering that, you know, Katsuragi only allows him to go after people that has wronged Katsuragi. And then at that particular moment, he just allowed Kurosaki to do his thing, despite the fact that, you know, it seems like he wasn't as involved in the situation. But obviously Kurosaki is smart enough to know that Katsuragi let everything happen, and it was confirmed in the end that they, again, it's this very interesting relationship between the two of them, where they know that they're kind of like using each other, but then at the same time, like, there's this relationship that they've built, and they know that that's what they're doing to each other and with each other. And I really just love that dynamic, because you don't really know like what Katsuragi is capable of doing when it comes to Kurosaki, and the same thing goes with him. And I really like that. And in the end, they said that Mikimoto ran off to Shanghai and that Kurosaki is gonna go after him, and that's setting everything for episode 5, which the preview is already out. So yeah. Now, other things, other notable things that happened in the episode is that it seems like because of Kurosaki and Tsurara's conversation in episode 3, things started to get a little, feel a little different between the two of them. Kurosaki, he's trying to not really avoid her, but there's something about her that started to make him act differently around her. It's not just because they have this like cat and dog relationship anymore, but there's something that's a lot deeper than that in terms of emotions. And I love how how Sho has, like, in this little actions that he's doing whenever he's seeing her, like there's definitely, like, you can feel the depth of everything without him really saying anything about her, acting too much about it, and I really like that. Another thing is the relationship between Tatsuki-san, which is Tsurara's father, and also Kurosaki. I love that they made him into a recurring character in a way that he's now, for those who don't know about the original work and at the same time who's only seen like the 2006 version, Tsurara's father isn't that big of a character or a recurring character in the series. He's more of like, it's basically just one case, to connect Kurosaki and Tsurara even further. But here they really turned his character around and made him a lot more present in a way, and I like that provided a little bit of parallelism between Kurosaki's family and Tsurara's family. And at the same time, because the issue of Kurosaki's father is so heavy on him, the fact that there's someone here who's not really trying to act like a fatherly figure, but who it just is, and he's seeing that in the family dynamic that he currently has with his children, and the way that it also gives him perspective as to how his father might have thought at the time that he never really understood in the first place. Because again, it's very clear that parents and children, they really have we have different perspectives in the matter most of the time, and that we never really understand each other until we hear what that perspective or where that perspective is coming from. And I like that they added that into the story, because again, it adds more to Kurosaki's emotional understanding of basically everything. And aside from Tsurara, this relationship that he has with Tatsuki-san, no matter how distant he might want to act, is again, is changing something in him and his perspective. And I really just like how they develop these things. And another thing is his relationship with Shiraishi as well. Like Shiraishi, it seems like they're also making him into a recurring character, which I really like, because again, Kurosaki and Shiraishi, they're living in, like, they're operating in different manners, but the way that they started, or the way why they're motivated to do the things that they do, is because their own families have been affected by Shirosagi's before as well, and they might have like different ways on how they go about things, but at the end of it, like there's still this like relation, like what do you call this, like a relatable relationship to the two of them, that it feels like, because they're coming from the same place. It's different from Katsuragi, who has this very complex relationship with Kurosaki. And then for Shiraishi, it's more of an acquaintanceship, or not really a partnership, but more of like a more leveled understanding. And so everything about, you know, the characters surrounding them, it's really interesting to watch. I really like the pacing so far. Again, it's just 4 episodes in, despite the fact that there's so many things happening, like so many details that are going into who's dealing with what or whatever. I like that they're able to weave it into a cohesive story, and that everything plays into this bigger picture, which is Kurosaki's life and relationship with coming into terms into what happened with this family. And again, I like that they didn't make it into, like, for example, the format of the first episode or the second episode where the scams are like a huge part of it and then whatever. So again, each episode knows its focal point, and I think that's very important in terms of the storytelling of something as dynamic as this, with so many characters to keep up with so many like narratives, and at the same time it also uses a lot of like technical terms and stuff like that to just, you know. And yeah, I think I really like how this episode turned out. I do feel like it's one of my favorite episodes so far after the pilot. Like it's definitely I think my top 2, and I think the reason for that is, again, it focuses, it centers around like the story of Kurosaki, you know, and it's very similar to episode 1 where there's just a right balance of that, you know. It's just not like case of the week or stuff like that. But yeah, another thing is, again, absolutely love Sho's acting in this one, especially in the scene confrontation with Mikimoto. Like, I know that they made it seem like at the end of the episode, again with Kurosaki, he knows that he was used as a pawn by Katsuragi in this entire thing, and they were kind of like just using each other all throughout this you know, the story so far. But in that particular moment, obviously, like, that was something that his entire life so far has been leading to. And the confrontation with Mikimoto, the way that Sho acted, the buildup of emotions from he was trying to control it, and then when he was at that point of asking, like, and when he was just telling him that this is what I did to you, this is what I want to happen to you, I want to destroy you and take everything from you and stuff like that. And then he broke down into somewhat like this little boy asking for what happened in the simplest, most mundane manner, and then getting answered somewhat mockingly. And then the shock in his face, like the way that you can literally feel him go numb through the screen at that particular moment when the police took Mikimoto away. It was so, I'm not sure if it's because I'm viewing this and I'm a fan of his and I've always loved this acting, that I was able to like feel that through the screen. But to me, that scene, you can definitely feel the numbness that he had in that particular moment through the way that he was moving and the way that his face and his eyes was fixed on Mikimoto. It was so good. I like the ending as well. So Kurosaki is going to Shanghai. He entrusts Kuro, which is his cat, to Tsurara, gives her cat food, and then she runs after him and tells him that that, you know, even with everything, even if he goes far away or somewhere far and distant, there will always at least be someone who will be there for him. So just to say her exact words in the last couple of lines that she had and talking to him, she said that that no matter how far you go, there will always be at least someone here waiting for you. You are not alone. And I like that because they started off this relationship as two different people who have very varying and different beliefs. And Tsurara is someone who is so idealistic to the point that she doesn't understand the reality that Kurosaki is operating in. But then and then eventually, like, learning about why he's doing what he's doing, I like that she wasn't just swayed easily and understood him entirely, because she keeps saying that she still doesn't understand why he has to go down that route. But in saying this, she's saying that, you know, he has an ally of sorts, and there's someone there who understands him finally, which is of course like very different, because obviously Kurosaki has this wall towards everyone, and he acts very differently towards everyone, even the people that he's close with and working with, like Katsuragi, Kanoko-san, and all these things. Because at the end of the day, when he's in the isolation of his own home, that's the only time that he gets to be himself, or that whenever he's processing his emotions or remembering his family, that's the only moments that he has that he really becomes Koshiro again and not Kurosaki or Kurosagi. And so Tsurara was able to look into that, not really see the entire picture, but look into that. And to some extent, I think Kurosaki knew it. That's the reason why he's acting so differently around her, especially after the conversation in episode 3. But I absolutely love how that entire thing played out. Like, they didn't really push so much of their relationship or romantic relationship, if you will, in this episode. It wasn't that at all, because there's so many things happening already. And I like that they didn't try to like push it even further, even with everything that's happening in this episode. They just let it in, and it's very, very subtle, but it's there. And yeah, so overall, again, as I mentioned, second most favorite episode, aside from the pilot. Really liking the pacing so far. Love the relationships, how they're developing it. I really, really love the writing, the way that some of the lines are said. So good. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Tell me down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on this particular episode? Do you love it? Do you not love it? Anything? So yeah, I'll be seeing you again soon in a new one. So goodbye.